And this is acting up too. Just give me 1 sec. This, Amanda said it did this to her last time as well. So just 1 second.
Are we good to go?
Not quite. Just give me 1 sec.
Okay. I was just away there for a minute.
Yeah. Do we have any other members yet? No, I still have time. Yeah, it's not,
It's not working?
no, it tries and then it,
Well, the sign that said we're in a practice session has gone away. And
Yeah,
it
I have
also says,
yeah. go
it
ahead.
says recording.
Yep, so I did, those are the first two. So we are recording on my computer, but we're not live yet. I'm just going to redo the fields and we'll try once more here.
Michelle, I assume the our request.
FEI,
Yeah, got out.
it's no. I had a contact from finance today challenging whether under Ontario law we can pre-qualify candidates. I am struggling with it, so I'm having a bit of an issue right now. So
Infrastructure Ontario does it all the time.
yeah, and that's, I thought the same thing. I looked at some other municipalities where I had taken stuff from. So I'm just, what did they quote? What did they say?
We've already done it once.
Yeah, that's what I said. Now, Anyway, I'm going to send you the link just as an aside because it goes against everything sort of that we approved at council. I sent it to them Friday, so I'm just waiting to hear back, but I'll just send you this so you've got it. I'm also in the process of getting some signs made for there so that we can have those up as well for anybody who might be interested.
But the Times might have to,
I know,
yeah,
I know.
just the site tour. I think the rest are okay, probably. It
Well,
depends
and the
how long.
release date, the release
Yeah.
date, which says today, obviously
Yeah.
that will need to be changed. The site
Yep.
tour, we don't have scheduled till December 9th. So I think
Okay,
a day or two delay might be okay.
yeah.
Not much longer though.
Okay, so here we are. We can't go public, which is a requirement. We don't, with the mayor's 5 minutes is turning into 5 days. Kathy hasn't joined us yet. And we need to meet.
The worst case scenario is, from my perspective, is that I record it, we meet, and I upload it to YouTube tomorrow. So that part, we can still hold the meeting. It's still recorded. I'm still doing the minutes. I'm trying to go an alternate way right now to get it to go live.
Okay, and I'm worried about the absence of
The other member.
a council representative.
Jim, did you speak to Kathy Little? Do I need to text her?
No. She emailed me advising me that she may be a few minutes late.
Okay.
There's the mayor,
Okay.
but it says Director Harris is connecting to audio. So you
Oh,
got your
because I sent him the link.
I'll just rename them. Yeah. As long as I get the right one. That's the right one. There we go.
There he is. He's Mayor McQueen now and not Director Harris.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and hopefully the technical issues that exist will be resolved quickly and justly. So we have an agenda in front of us, and I would like to comment on the agenda before I ask for any other comments, and that is there are two items. Item 5.2, I was not aware was going to be on the agenda. I think no, that was, I would have hoped that as the agenda was prepared, it would have been run by me, but it wasn't. And if we do not get to that item, I'd suggest that we deal with it at a subsequent time. And is there any other comments on the agenda, any additions or deletions? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as is? We'll try to get to all items, but it all depends on how the discussion on 5.1 goes. Thank you, Paul. Is that moving the agenda? Thank you. And a seconder? Thank you very much, Tracy. And all in favor? I think everyone's hands went up there at one point in time or another. Okay, the agenda is approved. We have minutes from our previous meeting, and that is back in September, long time ago. Is there any comments or errors or omissions on the minutes as presented? Hello, Councillor Little. Nice to see you.
Yeah, sorry I'm late.
Not you. You'd be surprised how unlate you are. We just got going. We're just dealing with the minutes right now. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented? I hope everyone's had a chance to look at them. Thank you, Michael. And a seconder for the minutes. Thank you, Tracy. And I'll ask if there's any more comments or questions, or all in favor to approve the minutes. Thank you very much. The item 5.1 relates to our work plan and our request to have a workshop meeting with council. We passed a motion to that effect in September. We were hoping to have a meeting in November. The last communication I'm aware of is that November doesn't work for a range of reasons, and we're looking at early to mid-December, hopefully. And I'm wondering if Mr. Mayor or Director Harris, if you could give me an update on that. Can't hear you. Nope. No, we can't hear you, Paul.
Think you haven't got your speaker or your microphone hooked up. There we go.
Okay, well, that's okay. There. Is that, do you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I guess must be a little bit of something on the end of that. So yeah, so Michelle and I have been talking certainly a couple times on dates and stuff. The bigger part, the part that's rolled into November is our budget. And it's populated a lot of dates in November along with our normal meetings. And so I think that Michelle, I know you were in conversation with Jim on a couple of dates, either the later part of November or the first part of December. And I think, yeah, I'll leave it to you from your conversation with Jim. You're on mute.
And Jim, I can't remember if I sent you dates or not, but I can do that to see what's available. I think we were talking about a Friday in December, as I recall.
Okay,
And
that would work.
I recall, was there, I mean, just looking at my calendar, I thought maybe, was it like the
the 3rd or the 10th?
10th? I thought maybe around the 10th was something that I know that Fridays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are always fairly busy, but Mondays and Fridays seem to be a little bit more flexible for me and maybe others as well.
Yeah, I think we were looking at the 3rd or the 10th was what we were aiming at for December.
Okay, maybe we could just make a little jot note of that right now, and everyone could check their schedules, and we'll confirm that in the next day or so, if that's okay with everyone. So we're looking at on a Friday, looks like the 10th of December at this point.
So how much time, Jim, do we, sorry, I missed the last meeting. How much time are you wanting to have? A couple hours, or like, what are you looking at for time wise?
I would think at least half a day.
Okay.
And once we get through the presentation and we get input from others, it may be a bit longer than that.
So a 9 to 12, like a 9 to 12, would that work?
Sure, we could even start earlier.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Jerry Lynn, could you share, make me a co-host so I can share my screen?
Yep, certainly.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, you can see my screen now. This is the presentation. We're on to the next item. And just by way of context, as I've outlined on this first one, this is a draft that is an interpretation of some of the information that we had talked about in our first phase of our work plan, which is our general familiarization with the whole municipality and the context of economic development. Then we looked at several research opportunities and ideas. And then our next phase is to combine it into some sort of document or plan, which is what we're doing today. And then we take that to council for discussion. And so this is the draft. It could be modified. It will be modified before it goes forward to the December 10th or whatever day we end up settling on for our meeting. I've characterized our meeting with council as a workshop as opposed to a presentation, and that's intentional because we expect and would encourage council to participate in the discussion. and with the Economic Development Advisory Group. And I thought it would be good up front really to explain again who we are. And this would be not only for council's benefit, but anyone who is watching or viewing or runs across the presentation, that we are a council appointed group of volunteers with experience and interest in economic development. There are 2 council members, and we have senior experienced staff from Municipality of Grey Highlands and the county. Steve, don't worry, senior doesn't refer to age. It refers to your long time in your illustrious position.
Uh-huh.
So what have we done? We've developed a 6-stage planning process. We've undertook review of major economic development themes, and we've discussed and prepared this presentation. This is what we'll be telling council. We will review the 6-stage planning process that we've undertaken. We're understanding the environment, looking at the nature of economic development, assessing opportunities, having our workshop with council, redrafting the plan, and talking with the public, and then formulating a final plan for council consideration. What we're doing right now is sort of the end of 3 and getting ready for 4. That's what we're doing in this meeting. And I should have flipped to the next slide because it shows them all much clearer. And I'll remember to do that next time I present it with council. So the purpose of the day that we are presenting to council, is to explain where we are. It's a workshop. We're here to listen, to explain and discuss. We want to benefit from council experience and direction, and we want to shape a clear message to take for public comment, particularly the last one. And so what will the workshop involve? A quick review of this presentation, a collaborative focus on the key points, looking for input and ideas, discussion of new ideas, and then hopefully achieving consensus on how to move forward. And these are some of the major themes that we have heard in our discussion so far. Growth alone is not the objective. Development involves quality of life and respect for ecological limits. Development in Municipality Grey Highlands is multifaceted, involving many sectors. We actually have, I'd say, a reasonably balanced economy when you look at it. Economic development and prosperity for citizens and organizations. Development can be new, can be from within, can be from transformation of current uses. And when I talk about transformation, I'm talking about the advent of C4s in the agricultural zone. They're transforming that land use. I'm talking about the ability to have a second residential unit on just about any lot. That's transforming the existing uses and resulting in economic opportunity. There are headwinds that exist in terms of demographics. Steve told us we're all too old. Capabilities, our labor force has certain strengths, but not others. Policies and conventional approaches to development. And a focus on priorities is essential. We can't be all things to all people all the time. We can be all things to all people over time, but not all the time. And we have to link our strategy to plans. We have to be consistent, both vertically and horizontally. We can't be promoting a commuter lifestyle and say that climate change is our #1 concern. There's some inconsistencies there we may have to grapple with. So based on that, I took the bold step of developing an economic development credo for this committee to consider. And these are 4 points that will shape the way forward for economic development. Economic development in the municipality of Grey Highlands will be built upon its strengths by undertaking and encouraging economic activity in priority sectors. Economic development will pursue improved quality of life for its citizens while respecting ecological, social, and sustainability principles, and will advance the environment for prosperity for its businesses and organizations. Quality of life is the first phrase in there. Economic development will advance as a first priority the commitments developed between the municipality and its citizens, businesses, and organizations expressed in plans and official documents. In other words, we have an official plan, we have official documents that result from a contract between the public and the municipality, and that has to be respected. It doesn't mean it has to be unchangeable, but it has to be respected. And economic development will only encourage proposals that respect the special rural, economic, and ecologically balanced approach that this credo for economic development in the municipality of Grey Highlands asserts. In other words, if someone comes with a proposal that is a complete insult to the strategic plan, the official plan, and everything else, that necessarily won't be encouraged by the municipality of Grey Highlands. We're looking for proposals that respect the special rural, economic, and ecologically balanced approach. So what do we think about the credo?
I'll make a few comments, Jim, if you don't mind.
Please.
So you've put a lot of thought into what you have presented here tonight, and there's a lot of exciting stuff in there. Now, for example, we have determined our municipality in a climate change crisis, not an emergency, but crisis, and we've determined that. So as we look forward or look forward, it's a statement. It's not really. We're still working on bringing back a bit of a policy on what that looks like. But as we develop that, what that means to Grey Highlands, I guess it will have a certain, and that will go to the public as well, or is going to the public, but that will have a certain, well, I know going back to our lens part of like with Kathy and yourself, and I talked about that lens. So you talk about a policy. So it's sort of like a litmus test. As we look at stuff, we sort of have to keep that in mind. How do we look to the future with regards to new development? Is that something that is that as an example of moving forward in a sense of trying to find the balance? But there is, and you mentioned it earlier on about if we're a commuting community, but also we have to take the looking at the climate. So if new development was coming forward, maybe part of our policy or planning might say, okay, what are you doing for charging stations for your whatever? Is that sort of as an example of?
I think you've raised two good examples, and it's the notion that of being consistent, okay, of being particularly in to use the climate change example, and it's a matter of when you talk about using the rural lens, yes, it's having respect for the factors that are in the lens, but also understanding that you're looking for development that's going to improve quality of life within the And so everyone, the people that are living here and visiting here have access to certain amenities and certain activities, but it's done within the ecological and sustainable ecological limits. And I mean, this is not different than what you heard. It's really fundamentally not different than what you heard about the Beaver Valley Vision, right? It's that same idea. It's a balance between the two, right? The between two variables that you're looking for development and prosperity for everyone in there. It's not, we want to pave everything in Grey Highlands and put up subdivisions.
So I'll go a little bit further, and this is something that I've always felt, and I don't want to capitalize on. I'll certainly make this last comment is when you're building a home or building development, there's a lot of different ways that you can save energy. You can site your building, site your development. There's also tree buffering, that wind shear, sun setting. How you position your house. There's just a lot of things that we can work with our environment that's to an advantage of your development, but still have that beautiful home, that beautiful development. But working with simple things, as 100 years ago, farmers planted windbreaks to protect their buildings or their and there's a lot of that stuff that I think can really help enhance, and it also creates a corridor. It creates an environment for all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to go too far on that, but it's something that I've always thought is there's a lot of ways you can do things and get there. And we have done that with a lot of the C4s with siting. We do have a what do you call it, a policy on tree planting and buffering and noise proofing and a lot of different things like that to try to mitigate issues that arise, right? And there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of things you can do to get to where you want to get to, but you can do it in not just a cookie cutter or a black and white way. There's a lot of ways to get to it, and I sort of feel that that's where you're sort of coming from.
Well, exactly. And it's a matter of stating that publicly in a credo type way so people understand it. It's, a lot of people planted lilacs near the outhouse, but they didn't necessarily communicate it to the public, right?
Yes, I never thought of that one, but that's, yes, that's, everybody has a certain idea. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, good. Any other comments at this point? I'm going to keep going on the presentation. We can come back to it. There are challenges that we have to face. The headwinds, I mentioned them briefly, the demographics, labor force, infrastructure, both in terms of hard infrastructure and social infrastructure. There are non-compatible development pressures. I'm talking about what happened to Shelburne. I'll just put it that way. I think a lot of the development pressures in Shelburne were not compatible with a rural lifestyle. There's car and truck traffic, and I mentioned that as a specific issue because Steve counted them all. Oh, sorry, it was who was it to count them? Tourism counted them all. But we know we do have car and truck traffic problems or challenges along Highway 10. We have internet challenges, and we probably have some others. That's why I put number 7 and number 8 down there. The first 6, I think we're all generally aware of. There may be other challenges that we think are important. There are opportunities for us to move forward. Transformative existing uses. I already mentioned the C4s and the 2 dwelling units. Development from within. And I've probably said this too many times, but I like to use the example of the garage in Flesherton who decided to expand and put the car wash in next door. Small little economic development expansion, but it was just, in other words, it's a vertical expansion. They're adding new elements to their business. There's an opportunity of strengthening relationships and roles with organizations. There's been a long discussion about the relationships with Chamber of Commerce in the municipality. There might be other discussions with service groups and others that are related to economic development. The opportunity of having a multiple sector economy where there's strength in agriculture, there's strength in health and wellness, there's strength in manufacturing of consumable products, ice cream, water. There's outdoor spaces, trails, and corridors that are an opportunity. And by corridors, Michelle was very helpful in pointing out the rail corridor, the rail corridors that exist that may be a wonderful opportunity, and other outdoor spaces and trails. Our opportunity is the rural landscape. It's disappearing as every new 400 series highway and GTA proposal gets approved. There's an opportunity with the internet. And I know everyone likes to complain about the internet, but here we are right now sitting in various spots of the municipality having this meeting. I would not be able to conduct my business without the internet for the last 2 years. And so there are opportunities to attract people who want to live in the countryside but need connectivity, and they can achieve it. And then there's the cultural fabric. This is, again, Michelle and I had a chat about this. This is not saying that we are unique or we have a competitive advantage with our cultural industries, but we do have strong cultural industries. It's not going to distinguish us from other areas, but it is going to help define and help encourage development of a quality of life within Grey Highlands. And in some areas, we do have particularly strong cultural fabric. We have nationally known artists throughout the municipality who hang in their works hang in the National Gallery. But it is something that is just a strong opportunity as opposed to a singular competitive advantage. So we need to be strategic. We need to focus on a few priorities at a time. It doesn't mean that other matters are not important when we do that. And it's best to start by building upon our strengths. And by the way, I should point out under cultural fabric, I'm not suggesting that the cultural class is the way to go with our development, Steve. That's just for those who read Richard Florida way back when he might have been relevant one week. So I have heard that there are perhaps 4 strategic sectors for economic development that can build upon our existing strengths as priorities for the next few years. Agriculture being one. It's going through a massive transformation, has been, particularly with the C4s, offers lots of opportunity. We've had some major seed grain facilities built. There may be other opportunities. We have downtown revitalization, particularly C1 zones of our primary settlements. Could be another priority. This is the core downtown of our settlement areas. Health and wellness. We have a new hospital. We have a long-term care facility. We have a community health center. We have family practitioners. And we have lots of allied health activities with massage therapists, physiotherapists, and what have you. And quite frankly, those 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds who retire to the countryside, may be very interested in an area that has a priority on health and wellness. And then there's tourism and culture as a fourth strategic priority, a sector to focus on. So, ideas. How can these sectors be supported and encouraged? And yes, Steve,
I want to go back to your other slide.
this one?
Yeah,
Okay,
so I'm just going to challenge you, not to be, not to
Good.
say it wrong or anything, just to throw
Good.
some discussion. So I'm always big on the three sectors that add wealth. And all the other sectors are important, but the three sectors that add wealth are agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing. And some might argue the new sector is remote work and retirees because they bring a lot of wealth with them. So when you say agriculture, does that also include, or I throw this out there for discussion, does that include food processing? Because that's one of the areas we think there is interest and a competitive advantage across grade. Now, you don't need to go big agri-food processing like you already have one, but it is a sector that might use inputs from the agricultural sector. So that's something to think about. And then,
by the way, I would include it, but that's okay.
okay, so when you talk about that and you then talk about the slides on what's allowed, so there's lots of agricultural zone land, but there's also, you have to have land that's zoned for agri-food production as well. So that's just one of those infrastructure things.
I think C4 covers, no, A4 covers it.
Yeah, it's where
Anyways,
enough land and services.
Yeah.
The other one is manufacturing. Manufacturing. You also have manufacturing in the form of a couple facilities. One very large facility, and it always helps when there's diversification of that sector. Although one could argue, I guess it goes across gray, but you may want to just give that some thought as well. Because it may be related to these other sectors. Not that you want to open up a big industrial park, but I also think there's an opportunity to link manufacturing to your Mennonite community, which has got quite a competitive advantage in my opinion. And of course, just another your tourism and culture, I think, is a huge opportunity. And I think that goes right across gray. I think there's lots of depending on the zoning and where you want it, you don't want to put it anywhere and it has to be balanced, but there is an incredible opportunity when we talk about tourism and if it's done right, the tourism development. So
Steve, no, very good points. I particularly liked your starting point. That is, we want to look at sectors that generate new wealth and generate more wealth. And I would argue that health and wellness is one of those.
Yes.
All of those people who are employed in the health and wellness sector are overwhelmingly bringing new money into the community, whether it be provincial money, whether it be insurance money, whether it be, it's new money, it's jobs that are being funded from outside, which is what you want, and being spent inside, which is what you want. So I would add health and wellness to your top three and make it 4.
Yeah, and you should also know that, I agree with you, Jim, with health and wellness sector, it's also one of the biggest sectors. And in fact, I might almost be the biggest sector in gray in terms of employment.
Yep, exactly. Director Harris raised her hand.
Thank you, everybody. It was funny because Jim and I reviewed this before and I've been thinking a little bit about it. And I think Steve's point around manufacturing is critical. And while we hit some of that, Jim, I know you referenced C4s and tying it to agricultural, but they have the value added manufacturing there.
Yep,
but I
yep.
think somehow capturing it outside of agriculture is going to be critically important. I went back and looked at our COVID business recovery action plan and some of the key priorities that we identified 2 years ago within that. And that wasn't around, it was more around trends that we were seeing and how we wanted to tap into that. And we talked about developing, you know, hyper-local supply chain opportunities. We talked about supporting business retention and expansion for niche micro businesses across a variety of sectors based on what we're seeing. And I think adding the manufacturing piece allows us to not lose sight of and explore some of those opportunities. The other one I'm, you know, in hindsight, that I'm not struggling, but I'm wondering a little bit is around downtown revitalization. I think that's a geographic priority. I think there's development opportunities, but I'm not sure that I would consider that a strategic sector. I think if we wanted to keep this at 4, and maybe we don't have to, having what we decide, you know, and how we want to develop our downtown settlement areas should be tied into strategic priorities and sectors, as opposed into geography primarily. And I don't know if that makes sense, but those are a couple of things as I've reflected on this that have kind of popped out in my mind.
Thank you. Any sentence that includes the word geographic makes sense to me as a geographer. but actually what I see function in that sentence, not the geography, and the function is C1. In other words, it's to support the commercial activity. So it's maybe it just needs some more clarity. And
Jim,
to
can
keep
I
our
jump in
downtowns vital.
So and we've embedded that in the municipality strategic plan, the revitalization of our downtown villages and hamlets. I'm wondering if this is still the right thing here, because I don't see it as a sector, and I know what you mean. And going back to Steve's comment about we need to also look at the high value sectors, and our downtowns, while they are visual representations and while the commercial piece is important, I'm not sure with finite resources if it's a sector we want to focus our attention in. We're doing that on another parallel. We're doing that through our community development and overall at the municipality. I'm just not sure if that should be a priority here under sector.
Okay. Any other comments on? By the way, I have no problem adding manufacturing. I thought that it was the important part that I wanted to embed was the C4s, which I had as a subset of agriculture in my own mind. So, but I think if we isolate it, that could be helpful. Any other
Jim?
comment, particularly on downtown revitalization, Paul?
Jim?
Oh, yes.
Just on the slide, the one that's right in front of us now. It's saying, you know, these are the sectors, but they're building upon the strengths that we have in our municipality. And it brings to mind the lens, the Grey Highlands lens, because these were some of the assets that people in the community identified, and they were organized around agriculture, wellness, tourism, etc. And when I look at the downtown revitalization, I'm thinking about what it is about our communities that, particularly our secondary settlement areas, tertiary settlement areas, that encourage you know, the startup and continuation of local business. Looking at agriculture, what is it about Grey Highlands that makes this such a strong element of our economy? Like, what do we value? What do we have to protect when it comes to health and wellness? You know, the community has worked for decades on getting a new hospital and struggling still to to keep Gray Gables relevant. So I think, there's a way of breaking these sectors down into, what are the strengths that need to be nurtured, preserved, enhanced, all those things. To me, it makes more sense that way to look at, what are, and maybe that's the uniqueness of Grey Highlands, is our mixture of all these various assets. I don't know if maybe that's me just trying to organize my own thoughts, but that's how this slide struck me.
I think you raised a valid point that at this level, it's just identifying the sectors. But if we go back and look at the challenges and opportunities that we had, we could identify challenges and opportunities for each one of those. And that is when we're starting to link this strategy to the actions, because it would, if we're talking about preserving or enhancing or whichever gerund we want there, if we do that for each sector and have that discussion around agriculture, then I think it would inform us, help us inform the next part of this, which is to generate ideas around what it is that can be done. So I think it's, I think your suggestion is good. I think it's something that perhaps we can figure a way out to put an additional graphic in there to illustrate that is, that we look at the sectors and the strengths and challenges for each one at the current time. Any other comments? Paul? Can't hear you.
That's my fault. A couple things just regards to agriculture. It's evolving. High cost of agriculture, land, equipment. You'll see that that's why you see a lot of the Mennonite community is having their shops and stuff and doing their things. But there's a change happening here, and it has to be a way that's encouraging younger farmers to come along, because as we know, the average age of a farmer is 60 years old or thereabouts, and the high cost of getting into that. So it is just before I got here, my son, who's 16, is taking our oats to the elevator, and he eats and sleeps about agriculture. So that's good. We've got to have young farmers, and you got to encourage them. And I'm told that I can't sell any of my farms because they can never afford them. But I'm just using that as a personal example. But yep. I know the affordability from the Mennonite side of that community. I had, it's funny, Jim and everyone else, the Mennonites are reaching out to me now. There's, just as your process and how do I do this and stuff, which I'm finding it's quite remarkable that they are starting to change that. But their method is, that's how they are able to afford it. Now, going back to that part of manufacturing that Steve's talking, the thing that makes their manufacturing work is they work together. So one builds this, the other builds this, the other builds this, and they all put it together. And they have a strong network that that's probably, and maybe Steve can maybe speak a bit more to that, but that seems to be what's making it work for them. And I know here in Grey Highlands, Michelle and I were talking, we had a long talk about this a few weeks back. Michelle and I talk about a lot of different things economically and tourism, and we had a long conversation about that. And say, just for simple math, here in Grey Highlands, if we have 200 shops now, and generally that is up to 5 employees, if you did the simple math and took 200 times 5, that's 1,000 employees, which is in itself sort of remarkable in that sense. But I think the value added. So at one time, the Chapman's model they were sourcing, one is their model is they use real cream, different than, and that is an advantage. So that's part of their, they use cream, not ice water and all that other stuff. And you look at it, it's ice cream, and other manufacturers call it frozen dessert. It's interesting, but they were sourcing out a lot of local cream, or a lot of the local farmers on that cream at one time. I'm not sure where they source it out. I know dairy farming is you have to have a quota system, so it's a little different than just going to Jim and George and Michael and buying milk off them. It's a little different that way, but they were sourcing out real cream. The downtown revitalization, I knew as a kid growing up, you know, everybody went to the small towns to do their shopping, especially on the agricultural side. Friday nights, my parents, they still go to town on Friday nights. That's just their thing. That was what they did. They go to Collingwood, they go to local wherever to buy their groceries, whether it was at one time Singhampton or whether it was Feversham. And then, you know, that whole part of retail changed over the last 50 years in the sense of the small stores, the bigger stores. It's probably economies of scale to survive and all that too. But how we get those coming back to our small towns, I think it's so key for our downtown revitalization to sort of think outside that box to bring people. And what brings people to retail in the sense of your small town and your downtown vitalization? We got to get it right, and we got to think about what's the secret, what's the secret for the next 25 years in the sense of, you know, what's unique. And I, you know, I don't know if you ever dropped into the Rusty Star there in Maxwell. They have a unique thing. It's Mennonite furniture, and they have all that part, and it draws people from afar. There's the Emporium in Feversham that has some really neat stuff. People, once they find it, they tell people. So it's being that, you know, and those aren't in a downtown. They're sort of businesses that are out there, but, you know, they survive because they have something that's unique or something that people desire. And you know what? Both of those places provide customer service. And that's probably the main driver of retail is customer service. It's about feeling that part. You know, I go into Susan's in Markdale and I buy my wife stuff for her Christmas presents or her birthday, and I get customer service, right? You pay more, but you get good quality and you get customer service. So, you know, I think that's one part of, and maybe all those retailers and that downtown are all working together for that customer service. And they say, oh yeah, you get here, but maybe you got to go around the corner. I don't know what that is. So I'll leave it at that. Tourism and culture, definitely, Jim. I know you've worked at different meetings for us as Municipality Grey Highlands. One was the long-term care and how important that is, and how important that is for our economy, for local jobs and good jobs. And you know, I'm not going to say more about long-term care at this point because you know what I said on that one, but it is, you know, and good jobs are important for in our community as well, because when people are making good money, they spend money in their community, and it's just, you know, anyway, just a 5-minute little blurb from me.
Thanks, Paul. Steve, did you have a comment?
Sure, and just to build on what Paul's saying, I think when you talk about strategic sectors and you want to build on your strengths, you know, Councillor Little talked about that. You have the Mennonite manufacturing is an incredible strength. They have built-in labor pool, which is what everybody in North America doesn't have. And so whether you work to expand policies so you can have more Mennonite shops, or whether you work to develop and attract some of their customers to your community to set up, you know, like they're exporting all their parts. There's no reason why some of their customers couldn't locate, or you attract a manufacturer or an assembler who will use them as an input. So just a comment on how you think about that sector and your strengths in the community. I just on a comment on the downtown, primary settlement areas are really important. And you may see your health and wellness, your tourism feed into that downtown revitalization. So I see everyone's point about whether it's geographic or whether it's primary. downtown revitalization, though, one of the key aspects of downtown revitalization is getting people living downtown. You do that, you create a vibrancy. And one of the challenges you have to think about is, are you a regional service center? And if you are, then you have to, there's fundamental things you got to provide. You got to have an area for a business park, or people locate elsewhere and they're always commuting. So, you know, you look at the data and the tourism data where Flesherton has got a high degree of tourists there. You may take policies, land use policies and special event planning or whatever, and focus your tourism sector there and more of a regional center in Markdale. But those are things just to think about. But I just throw that out there in terms of sectors and how they build on each other.
Good point. And it is the analogy that I have probably abused by using it too much, is that of a rhizome plant, where everything is connected. And there are many different ways that you can start to improve your plant, your rhizome, and you can enter it from almost any which way. And there are connections to all aspects of it. And the roots are deep, and you don't always see them, but there is a connection. And so economic development, particularly in what I'll call smaller rural settings, is very much a rhizome, where everything is the interconnectivity is critical to acknowledge, and to but it gives you some flexibility on strategy, because you can enter from any point and influence all.
If I may have one more point, Jim, just, sorry, I know I've been talking too much, but in the absence of this, of a strategy, what you get is you just react. So what happens in communities that don't have an economic development strategy, who don't have a vision, and who don't put down these sectors and actually work to create it, is they sit there, and what comes to them may not be what they want. And I'll give you an example of this. Right now, warehousing is in such high demand. And you on the highway, I wouldn't be surprised if people start knocking on your door saying, we want to put a massive warehouse somewhere, because that's what's in high demand. And in fact, municipality not too far from you is actually getting some interest in that area. Now, whether that's right or wrong, that's not to say it's wrong or right. It's just to say, you know, if that's something you didn't want and it comes knocking, then, you know, it just starts to happen and you have pressure. And you have to build your policies, particularly your land use policies, around this, because one of the biggest challenges we have when attracting investment is, where's the zoning and where's the services? And if you don't have that, you really can't have that next conversation with the investor.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'll stop.
Yeah, exactly. I want to come back to this one when you talk about if you don't plan, you just react, and I think that's been the scourge of many a municipality for a long time. And the other one is the need to focus on a few priorities at a time. The toughest thing about strategic planning is to build consensus around, well, yes, that's important, but we aren't going to focus on it right now. We're putting resources towards this, this, and this, and not everything on the table. And because as council and senior staff well know, there's no shortage of people coming to municipalities with the most important critical thing in the world. And some of them aren't, they're all important, but some of them are not priorities. And that's a tough message. But I think it helps, as Steve pointed out, to have it documented. So when council is confronted with those decisions, it's possible to react and say, this is why it is not a priority to us. Paul, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just asking other people here on tonight's meeting. We just are coming out of COVID, but we're finding there's some changes that are happening. Has anybody picked up? We know real estate was a big one. Has anybody picked up of some of the changes? Because I hear that, you know, people aren't going back to the gym as much as they were before COVID. There's a lot of, is it to time, or in 5 years we'll be back to the normal? I don't know. Is anybody picking up on changes? Because, you know, because social media, everything's so connected, like things change so quickly to a certain degree. I mean, our stock market is strong, or other things are strong, but does anybody else on this have any thoughts on, are we did that reset things? Have we been, you know, are we staying? I know the provincial government is, you know, they're providing an incentive for staycations, and we stay, you know, to encourage us to stay and not travel far and spend our money at home. And, you know, I just throw that out, Jim. Just, is there any thought on that? Because that could be a disadvantage or an advantage for us as well, because it's always trying to be ahead of that curve if we can figure it out. And I just wondered if there's any comments on that.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I can comment to that. I mean, on a couple fronts. I mean, I think we're on the COVID piece. For what I'm hearing, I work with all of the banks, so downtown Toronto, and my clients, they're all saying they're not going back to work. They're all doing, they are for the most part planning 1-2 days a week. So I still think that working from home, wherever that might be, is going to be quite honestly, a long term. And even when the companies do go back, which quite honestly is full time, at least for, you know, that sector, probably a year away before they would expect to bring back all their employees. But again, a lot of them are saying, you know, I'm not planning on going back. It's going to be 1-2 days a week, if that. The other thing I've heard, just from a more of a local aspect, is, you know, the ski clubs and golf clubs, they're all full from a membership perspective. So I think that also says something from a long-term perspective, like this is a long-term change.
Yep.
You know, the plan is the families are going to be up north on the weekend versus, you know what, we're going to play hockey in the city. So
Yep.
I think that's a big change, and that's just the nature of people's how they work and where they work has changed.
And when you work from home, you can golf more too.
Yeah, when you don't have to drive 2 hours up north on a Friday, you're
Yep.
already there. It's a little easier.
Yep, exactly. Michelle.
Thank you. To build on Michael's comments, what we are also seeing is that a lot of our seasonal residents in Grey Highlands, this was, there are places in Grey Highlands where they're secondary residents and their primary residents were in the larger urban centers. We're seeing actually that being turned on its head, where there are a lot of people using their urban residents more as pied-à-terres, and more of their time is being spent up here, because the shift is, a lot of it is around lifestyle. And I think if nothing else, COVID has showcased that a prioritization of what really matters. I think the other thing I just wanted to point out, when we entered COVID, and I am not for a minute minimizing the impact it's had on a lot of businesses, especially within certain sectors, particularly tourism business. We did undertake a business retention and expansion survey specifically related to COVID at the beginning of this year. And the results were surprising to us, because while there were some businesses that were hurting, the overwhelming majority were either staying sort of constant or growing and pivoting. And I know pivoting may be an overused word, but we've seen a lot of these new young entrepreneurs who are looking at this area, who have left the city or who are choosing lifestyle, have actually embraced what's come out and have found market gaps where they've been able to thrive. And what we are seeing or tending to see is the businesses, and I'm going to take out the tourism sector, tourism and hospitality, because I think that's, a different scenario. But other sectors are the ones that are struggling, are perhaps the ones that may have been struggling prior to COVID and or are towards the end of their business life cycle. And we're looking for an opportunity to sort of either retire or move out of the market. And we're seeing this emergence of this new entrepreneurial class, which is, I find, inspiring.
Thanks, Michelle. And that's so true. For a lot of us who had their business completely portable to the new platform, a new format. It's been a busier 2 years than one would have expected. Any other comments on the strategic opportunities for economic development that we have on that particular slide? You'll notice my avoidance of the word sector. What I am encouraging then, and what I'm going to suggest, I'll suggest it at the end, is how we move forward. And I'm getting a sense that we need to maybe not only have our conversation tonight, but we may need to have an opportunity to review the reworked presentation in an asynchronous fashion, so everyone can be comfortable with it before we take it any further. So what I have here are not sacrosanct comments at all, but for each of the 4 sectors that I had I just jotted down some ideas on how they can be supported or encouraged. And these are, we've heard a lot of them in just our last conversation. And it's just, I just have ideas that have been around. Some of them have been already supported. Some of them are current, and some of them may be a little far-fetched. But bylaws, our agricultural bylaws, I particularly am referring to one particular bylaw that the municipality was considering with respect to the liability on agricultural farmers whose cattle happen to escape their property. That was initially developed without consultation with any of the agricultural sector. So we got to work with them. We use the rural lens that Kathy referred to earlier. Perhaps there's an opportunity to develop an agricultural center, a place that could be a permanent agricultural show forum, and provide opportunities for other types of exchanges, agricultural exchanges, such as markets, festivals, and fairs, where they also occur locally within the various communities. The transitional land use, that's where I had included C4s within, because they essentially exist within the agricultural area. Somehow support 4-H and the county federation. Of course, I'd love to see the county federation move to Grey Highlands and occupy one of our existing facilities. And it would be nice to have the County Federation of Agriculture in an agricultural area.
Versus Hanover, right?
No, it's in Owen Sound, I believe.
No, well, no, the Grey Bruce office is in Hanover.
Oh, it is now. Okay.
Yeah. But I do want to say one comment. The Federation is having, or Diane Booker is having what they call shed talks.
Yeah.
And COVID is sort of, but it's not, it's just having conversations with the agriculture sector. So I just wanted to throw
Yeah.
that in there in the sense of talk. You got to have conversation.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to suggest, and this was my intent in developing this list, is that we don't have to agree upon these points at this right now, or even before we take them to council. I would like to just throw these ideas out for each one of the 5 areas, manufacturing being the additional one, and I'll make those amendments to start to use it to generate discussion with council, and then hopefully facilitate that discussion in a way that council will endorse, reject, or add their ideas to how things could move forward. And what you see here, of course, is the genesis of individual strategies for each of the opportunity areas that would be generated after a discussion is held with council, revised, and then with the public. And then you could see that there could be strategic statements, documents, priorities set for each of the sectors / opportunity areas that would be guide the municipality for the next 2 or 3 years. The duration of a priority within the strategic plan. And these, I say, are ideas just to get the creative juices flowing when the discussion is held with council. Are there comments on that approach, or do you think it's sort of these points are catalysts for discussion, and hopefully that will lead us somewhere with council? If it doesn't, then we will have to, as a group, take that input from, or lack of input from council on any one particular, and revise the comments ourselves when we do the revision after our council engagement.
So Jim, just a comment there. A lot of great stuff here, a lot of opportunity to put a lot of ideas down. And I'm just thinking that, are we going to need a morning break and then an afternoon session only to try to, I'm not sure, but it sounds like you really want to pull a lot of stuff out of this from the discussions of building policy moving forward. So I'm just thinking that your format, are we, there's different formats where somebody's jotting ideas down, you put it into a bit of a, okay, this topic, put down that, what is your format? What's your thoughts? What do you really want to try to pull out of that discussion?
Well, I would like to, I think it would be helpful for our purpose to have a discussion with council and get a list of ideas and opportunities for each of these areas that we can take to the public for comment. And then ultimately use it as a framework for developing individual strategic statements for each of those priority sectors. So if it takes a day, it's worth it.
I'm just thinking to do it right and not be pressured under time and, not having the ability to have people to really think, because you're talking about something you're developing. And I like to get Kathy's comments as well, because, so many of our meetings, we have so much business to deal with. It's like bang, 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 and you don't get a chance. But this is more of a workshop or pulling.
That's right.
We're creating something here. It's not just, oh yeah, that's another meeting. Oh, that's another meeting, because we get lots of meetings. So I just want to make sure if we don't cut ourselves short on something that is, and I have a good, this is really starting to open up my mind of what you want. So I would like to get maybe a comment from Kathy as well.
Yes, Kathy has her hand up.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I my point that I was going to say was, the first thing I wrote down as we started to discuss this was that these things are going to elicit a lot of conversation at the council table. Knowing my colleagues and just the the work that we've done over the course of the term so far with a lot of these elements, and people certainly have their own ideas. I think you're going to get a lot of good conversation. So yeah, I agree with the mayor that it would be nice not to be under pressure to give. This is a really important thing that we're doing, and it's finally receiving the attention that it deserves. And I think the guidance that we have here with this committee has been really helpful, and I'm quite optimistic moving forward. So I don't think we should shortchange the discussion that happens. I don't know if it'll be at the council table or not, but the discussion with council, I think I'm looking forward to that.
Good. I'll block that weekend off too, then, just in case. No,
Like
I
Jim,
won't.
Jim, you make some good point. Sometimes a retreat, and I've had those over the, and I'm sure other panels, sometimes a retreat pulls stuff out. I'm not saying that's what this is, but you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
I've had those where you go off somewhere and you develop something. And I'm sure you've been part of those, and everybody else on this whole meeting has probably been part of those as well. And they do have their advantages for sure.
So, and yes, given that we've been at this an hour and a half, and I've been rather quick going through the slides, and we haven't discussed the points under each one, I think your suggestion of a full day timing is probably appropriate. And of course, you can always end early. You can rarely extend these types of meetings. So it's probably better to book it as a day. Okay. First thing is changes will be made to this draft based on our discussion today. And I will do that in consultation with Michelle. Hopefully in the next few days. It depends on our mutual schedule. We will also firm up the meeting date with council, and by everyone having an opportunity to check their schedule. We currently have it penciled in for December the 10th. We will then take this presentation to council as a workshop in a workshop environment. We'll go through the points with council. We'll listen and revise the presentation based on the consensus that we will undoubtedly achieve with council. And then we will take it for a public engagement. Probably, perhaps that will take the form of a couple of Zoom sessions that are advertised, and people can join in and have we can reveal the essence of the presentation and listen to comments. We will make revisions one more time based on that public input. And then we'll go back to council in a more formal setting, probably as a delegation, to make a presentation with concrete recommendations to council. And right now, just so if we're talking substance, I would suggest that recommendation would be something along the lines that we focus on the following areas. That would include the ideas that we heard from the public and council, and that this group, EDAG, be directed to prepare brief but individual strategic documents for each of the sectors to be implemented over the next 2 years or 3 years or whatever, and to return those back to council as quickly as we can, well in advance of nomination date. And that way we can get a strategic direction set by the current council for its economic development strategy for the next few years. Any comments on either those next steps or even my conjecture and what it might look like when we make recommendations to council, or anything else in the presentation at this point. You will see a second version this week, and it will be inviting you to make any additional comments prior to our meeting with council. And if there are any other changes, we'll make sure they're fully communicated to everyone, so you can know what's in the presentation that we'll be sharing with council during the workshop. At this point, silence is wonderful. We have, it's 6:45. I think we have time to move on to the next agenda item that talks about the community improvement plan. My aim was to try to get the meeting closed by 7, and I think we have a good chance of doing that. So, Michelle, before you present the 5.2, there's someone on this call called Officer Steiner that you need some introductions.
I will,
Jerry Lynn
thank you. Jerry Lynn first. I was just going to say she needs a motion.
Thank you. Exactly. Can we get a motion to receive the presentation for information, please?
Almost made it. A motion on 5.1 to receive for information at this point. Thanks, Kathy. Seconded by Tracy. Thank you very much. Any further discussion or question, comment? All in favor? Okay, over to you, Director Harris.
Thank you. I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce our new Economic Development Officer, Daniel Steiner. I think this is week 3, maybe week 4 for him joining the municipality. As I think most of you know, Krista House, our previous Economic Development Officer, has moved into a new role with the municipality in Parks and Recreation. So Daniel comes to us with a significant history in rural economic development and grant writing, actually, which is lovely. He's worked for the province of Alberta. He's worked in rural economic development in BC and Alberta and the Yukon, hence his screenshot behind him. And we're really happy to have him join our group. So there he is. And Daniel, if you want to say a few words before I launch into the other stuff.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, that was a pretty thorough introduction. I just moved to Orangeville with my wife and kids, and so I am one of the commuters that come to Grey Highlands, but it's a nice commute. It's a lot better than going the other way into Toronto or something crazy like that. So I'm really glad to be part of the team here, and I look forward to contributing and learning more, and so far so good. So far so great, actually.
Well, that's terrific, and welcome to the Economic Development Advisory Group in particular, and we look forward to your contributions and insights. I'm glad it was you, because when it just had your name, Officer Steiner, I thought the OPP had been deciding that they're going to monitor our calls. So, anyways,
Jim,
welcome,
just
Daniel.
a comment through you to Mr. Steiner. Just a quick comment.
Sure.
Alberta is certainly quite rural and a lot of agriculture. I just wondered if you had any comment on the agricultural part of economic development and what you've seen or what you can bring.
Well, I know I was really a big proponent for agri-food and agritourism. And so when I was in Big Lakes, which is in northern Alberta, I found my time split quite a bit between oil and gas interests and agriculture. And the 4-H club, actually, I know that you mentioned that in your presentation, was something that I was involved with as well in a previous position in British Columbia. And we started a loan program where we offered a small loan to the students that were about to purchase their animals at the beginning of the season. and they would pay it back at the end of the season. And it actually got some people out of the low income in particular to be more engaged with the 4-H club. And I always thought that was a feel good. And it was a great way for us to get more involved with the 4-H club. So I always thought that that was a good thing that I'd love to see happen elsewhere.
Terrific. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, Michelle, over to you for 5.2.
Thank you.
We have 12 minutes.
Yeah, so this will be brief. In July, the recommendation went forward to council that our community improvement plan, that we make a few modifications to it. In the prior 2 years of its existence, and this is year 3, 2021 was year 3, we reached our budget capacity, and we had worked at a first past the post application process. So in order to level the playing field and allow staff to review applications sort of in a comparative manner, we moved to 2 intake dates, which one is September 15th for the following calendar year. The other one is February 15th. The other thing that we did, and Jim, this aligns very closely with what you spoke about in, as we reviewed your presentation, is that we need to make sure that priorities are and things that we're undertaking align with larger municipal priorities. And we felt one of the recommendations that came forward to council in July that was approved was that after staff review the applications at an intake date for the community improvement plan before it goes to council, that we share those applications and recommendations with EDAG so that you can sort of see the types of things that are coming forward, and just be aware, because I think it will inform some of your own thinking as we proceed with this. For this intake, we have, and I'm going to turn it over to Daniel because he's now briefed in this, and he's going to be taking the lead on administering this program. But we had 3 applications that were received for this intake. Total grant allocation would be $16,000 of $45,000 total budget. And that is on the assumption that the budget approved by council gets passed for 2022. But we wanted to put those forward for your consideration. And Daniel, you can certainly speak to them if you would like. But I think the 3 are pretty straightforward as outlined in your project summary.
I was going to say the same thing in that they're pretty straightforward. I know Maryland Food Co. in particular is a very simple signage request. And the estimate that we received was actually just under $2,500. So the recommended approved amount is for the full $2,500, of course, 50% of eligible costs. I think that one is very straightforward. The one we received from Ski Property Management is a rather large project. It's about a $60,000 project. And we aren't certain at this point in time how much of that is the accessibility improvements. But being that this is a reimbursement type program, I see no reason why we can't recommend the maximum of $7,500 up to 50% of eligible costs. And we will make it very clear to the proponent that that their invoicing comes in so that we can delineate what exactly is accessibility improvements and what are general improvements to the building. Without that, we wouldn't be able to reimburse them at all. So there's that one. And then of course, White Pines Family Farm. I think that one's kind of an exciting proposal where they're planning to do quite a few improvements on their property there. And so we recommended their property itself, their quotes are around 11,500. And so, they're well above what we would be able to reimburse. And so we're recommending the maximum there for 3,500. A similar thing for the signage as well. We don't know what their exact costs are yet, but we expect them to be quite a bit more than what would be eligible as well. The building fees and the planning fees, we don't know at this time. And so we would expect them to potentially submit a new application just for those once they know the cost on the February 15th intake.
And just so you're aware, generally what we approve is based on the maximum that we think would be allocated. And so if we approve $2,500 for signage, that amount gets put against budget. We make the assumption that the full amount will be spent, and then we reconcile the budget towards the end once we've had proof of work completion and receipts to support the expenditure. I should also tell you that how we run this program is when the applications, when we have an applicant who comes forward interested in the community improvement plan, they have a pre-meeting with the municipality to identify any potential areas. And that's with a multidisciplinary team that includes somebody from the building department, somebody from planning, somebody from economic development, and sometimes we bring someone in from finance, depending on the implications, so that we're looking at it and streamlining the opportunity for the business and making sure we identify any issues. So by the time this comes to EDAG and then subsequently through council, it's been given a significant review.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Michelle. I have some experience with community improvement plans. When particularly most deeply, I guess, when I was city manager in Owen Sound. And one thing that we knew from that experience was the need for specific criteria and the need to make sure you adhere to them. I have difficulty supporting some of these proposals that because I'm not quite sure where the focus is. I do recall reading the original report that talked about a priority on C1 locations, which is downtown community improvement. That was also the case in, I believe that was in the staff report that went forward, that there'd be a focus on that. Is that not the case, Michelle?
That would be the case if there were competing priorities. We want to keep this, the recommendation is that we allow anybody to apply, but if there was a, if we're getting into finite financial resources, that the priority be given to C1 downtown development, that would be one of the #1 priorities. But at this point, with a proposed budget of $45,000, 25,000 from the county and 20 from Grey Highlands, I think that's how it works. We're well under 50% of the budget. And I think we felt comfortable that we still wanted to encourage these things because they are all three within the suite of offerings that are in the CIP grant program.
But it's that type of flexibility that ultimately, in my experience, leads to problems with the CIP program. When you say that C1 will be a priority unless it's not a competitive situation, I think my view would be, I would encourage you setting a priority. That C1 is what our priority is, as opposed to someone who wants to make improvements to their farm, for example. What if I wanted to put a new floor in my home occupation? Does that qualify? No. So, but
a home occupation isn't considered. It's not zoned. It wouldn't fall within that. So we haven't been. So right now we've kept the. We've been within our. Sorry, but it doesn't fall within the zoning that is permitted, I think, and I'd have to go back and check on that one. But we have not exceeded our cap on this, and my personal belief is that we want to invest all of this money in our community, and I would hate to hold back money waiting for C1 applications that may not come forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so the recommendation is for the first two. And the second one, this is sort of like a pre-approval before estimates are provided.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so the proposal is to approve 2 and defer 1, correct? Because at this point, the committee recommends deferring consideration of this grant to February 2022 intake, at which time details may be available. Is that That's what's actually been suggested here, is to approve two and, or that's why you're going to council, is to approve two and defer one. Is that, am I reading it right?
Daniel, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, the deferral specifically refers to the planning fees and building fees, because we have not received any information about those specifically. But
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. Is everyone clear on the information? I think it's just provided to us for information at this
Information.
point.
That's correct.
Yeah, we're not an approval authority on these matters at all, but it is just for information. Are there any other comments anyone would like to make?
And I think,
I
Jim,
see.
just to finally say that, you know, this is your first chance of having EDAG look at these things for information. When we come into looking at 2023 budget, EDAG may want to comment when we go forward, because the recommendation is that every year we go forward with priorities for council to consider under the CIP. If this group wants to recommend more stringent things, it is certainly in the purvey to make those recommendations for council consideration in future years.
I don't necessarily, and I don't want to pick on words, but not stringent, but more specific would something that I would, and more targeted would be something that I would encourage. I remember long debates that occurred in Owen Sound about people on one side of the CIP area being able to get money, but people on the other side of the road weren't eligible. And there were reasons for that. And they happened to follow zoning lines, okay? And so it was tough to stick to that at times, but it ended up really targeting the program. So that's the genesis of my questions. It's not to challenge what's in front of us here. Any other comments? It is exactly 7 o'clock. Goodbye. No, sorry, we need a motion, right, Deputy Clerk? Or do we?
Yes, please.
So what are we doing with this? We are receiving for information.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, is there a person ready and willing to move that? That's of a voting member. Thank you, Michael. And a seconder? Thank you, Tracy. Okay, any further discussion or question? All in favor of receiving the report? Thank you. That's done. Okay. The Economic Development Advisory Group received report for information. Proceed with meeting on the 4th Tuesday. This is different. Didn't we used to meet on the 3rd Tuesday? Or am I imagining? Yes.
Thank you.
Very
The committee coordinator did explain that there was a conflict with the meeting dates as this year. I think it was public planning maybe that it conflicted with. I'm not sure. So she's recommending the 4th Tuesday of these months, and there's no conflicts at this time with that date.
Okay. Have we set a meeting for January?
So Jim,
Currently, there's
Jim.
no meeting, sorry.
Okay.
so Jim,
Yes.
we go back to council to talk about a date. And I know council will, as I've been thinking about this through the meeting, I know council is going into a heavy budget next week, and there's a lot of meetings going up to the first week in December. And maybe Kathy can have a comment there as well. But I mean, we want a full slate of council members to be at this important meeting. And the only thought I have, I was looking at my 10th, I have a meeting at between 9 and 10, but I'm available from 10 on. But if I can't nail something down, is there an early part of January that could also work? And the only reason I was thinking about that is I know council's going to have a lot of budget on their mind going through, coming after the holiday, coming fresh into is that an option? I don't know. We'll try to get something for December, but is that another option? And I presume that'll include everybody here as well as part of that. I'm assuming, right?
That would be fine with me. something like in the first week of January?
Yeah.
Or even December 17th?
Yep, I'll have to, just give me some
Yeah.
flexibility, because I can raise this tomorrow at our council meeting. We have a council meeting, but I was just thinking that, we don't want, just as we've gone through your presentation today, and you said about a January meeting, maybe that's another possibility of having a January meeting that would include council, a full day. Council has a fresh, after the break, has a fresh, clear slate in their mind, and it's not going to be rush. I'll have that conversation. Kathy and I'll have that conversation tomorrow at council, but I just wanted to raise that as an option.
Could with that in mind, and the fact that you have a meeting on the 10th, could we look at December 17th or January 7th, I believe it is?
Not that it's all about me, but I am on vacation the week of December 17th.
Okay.
Yes, Steve, it is all about me.
What's that word? What does that word mean?
I'm going to try this time. Last time I tried to take a vacation, we had a rodeo instead.
Okay.
So
Sorry, Michelle.
That's
Also,
okay.
there's-
Well, I don't have a problem. It'll give us as a group time to ruminate a bit on with the changes on the presentation. If we aim for January 7th.
There's also, I have January 10th, which is a Monday as well. There's a Monday also available for people.
Mondays don't work for me, unfortunately.
So
Yeah.
Fridays are more
Yes.
preference. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And-
Good.
Okay. So that's some flexibility. Kathy and I'll have that conversation tomorrow at council. I don't know if Kathy has any comments or not, but certainly we'll have that conversation tomorrow.
Okay. Is there any comment on the proposed meeting dates, which is the 4th Tuesday in each month? We have some dates here we may want to add or delete as we go along. One of those dates happens to be my birthday, and I'm not going to tell you which one, but if I'm sitting here with a little glass of champagne, you might know.
And it says happy birthday in the background, right?
That's right. And there's balloons and I have a pointy hat on. Yeah. Okay. So we need a motion to accept this report with suggested dates. And at the same time, I want to add to that motion to say, and that the mayor investigate setting up a workshop with council on January 7th, 2022. Suddenly I feel old when I say 2022. Of course I am old, so. Okay, so a motion that's revised, yes, Jared?
So that would be an amendment to the main motion. So we would need a mover and a seconder for that clause to be added.
Okay, it's moved and seconded by Councillor Little and Michael.
Thank you.
And so.
Just a comment.
Someone prepared to move, yes.
Just how much
Yes, sir.
staff do you want at this council meeting?
Oh, at the workshop?
Yes, the workshop.
Oh, I hundreds. No, I think Danielle and Michelle and Steve, of course, will be there as a member.
Okay.
And Danielle, I guess, is the only non-member staff attending. Because both Steve and Michelle are members of the committee.
Thank you for that information.
Yep. Okay, motion to move the amended motion, please. Thank you, Tracy. And a seconder? Kathy, I'm taking that head scratch as a seconding.
Don't we, sorry, Mr. Chair, don't we need to vote on the amendment first?
Oh, I thought we did we not? My apologies. If I'm going too quickly, it's getting late. We have an amendment that adds that the mayor would try to arrange that meeting on January 7th. All in favor? We already had a mover and seconder for it. There. Now we have an amended motion. I need a mover and a seconder. I had Tracy move the amended motion, and I had Councillor Little second that. Is there any further discussion or question?
One last comment, Jim. If
Yes,
it's a full day on a Friday, are you looking at 9:30 to 4 and an hour break or half an hour break for lunch? Because we'll be Zoom, right? We'll be Zoom,
yes, I presume.
presume a Zoom. Okay, so 9:30 to 4, does that sound?
Yeah, something, I think that should give us adequate time, yes.
Okay, just so I make sure I have the details, because if I have
Yeah.
details, that's always good. Thank you.
Yes, okay, great. So any other further question or comment on the motion to approve the amended motion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Any other comments from members of the committee at this point in time? I feel like I owe you 8 minutes. We're over time. Okay, our next meeting to be determined based on the mayor's successful arrangements made tomorrow. And other than that, I think it's a motion to adjourn would be in order. Or we can keep going. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael, and seconded by Paul. Any further discussion on that motion? All in favor? Time for dinner.
Can I just clarify one thing? The workshop would be a council meeting. Everyone's aware of that, not an EDAG meeting. That the workshop would have to be a council meeting. The next EDAG meeting is February 22nd of 2022. I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page before we leave.
Can it be a
Council
joint meeting?
Council meeting or committee of the whole?
Well, it could be a committee of the whole, yes, but it's not an EDAG meeting. As far as it being both,
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
it's assumed that all EDAG members will be invited, but technically the next EDAG meeting would be February.
I'll find my Robert's rules on whether it can be a joint meeting and we'll have a chat. Yeah.
Thank
Anyways,
you.
we'll all get together. See you, Steve. Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Michelle, can you hang on for a minute? Oh, she's gone.